to the last, but definitely not the least of the panels of the day. Actually, we kept what we consider the heavy guns to every panel is a top panel, but we kept a very significant one for you, the Shipowner viewpoint. And our partner, Chris Wiernicki, is going to moderate it. Where is Chris? There you are. And I will turn it over to Annie, who has been running the conference and will be running them without me as well, whenever.
We want to thank ABS again for being a great partner. And if we can have the panelists come up.
Okay. All right, I guess we're ready to rock and roll. This is the last panel of a wonderful program. And there's some really interesting perspectives and really interesting insights that we're going to talk about this afternoon. So welcome. It is a special treat. We've got a very distinguished group of world-class ship owners and industry leaders. And I know that you are looking forward to hearing kind of from their point of view and their perspective relative to kind of where are we today? Where are we going? What is our focus? And, you know, quite frankly, how we're going to get there. Let me go ahead and introduce the panelists. I think everyone has seen them in their program, but let me go ahead and introduce them. They're not. It's not in any order. Mr. James Marshall, founder of Berge Bolt. We've got Mr. Carlos Delaportas, President and CEO of DryDel Shipping. Where's Carlos?
Costas.
Good.
Costas. No Carlos, Costas.
Sorry?
No Carlos, but Costas. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
We've got Jonathan Fancher, CEO of Petrodec Global.
Sí, sí.
Mr. Christoph Toepfer, founder and CEO of Borealis Maritime, and Dr. Anil Sharma, founder and CEO of GM's and Lilla Global. I'm getting old, so and I got to get a new pair of glasses, so we'll work it from there. Let me just kind of preface this before I start asking the panel some questions. I think we talked a little bit about today. We live in interesting times. Everyone is recognized where we are. We're, you know, in many ways in the early innings of a decade of change. A lot of wild cards. A lot of global shipping shapers in front of all of us. I'm sure over the course of the day we've talked about the geopolitical turbulence, the regulations, the technology. All that is kind of shaping the way we as an industry and, you know, especially as ship owners kind of develop their playbooks. And I think this afternoon we're really interested to hear, you know, what are those playbooks? What are those short games, mid games, and long games that we are kind of looking at collectively and individually? And you know, how in these playbooks are we addressing some of the newness of this industry? New languages of shipping, CO2 dollar reduction per ton mile, now with Fuel EU Maritime, and probably now with the upcoming IMO requirements. We're going to be talking about CO2 equivalent of grams per megajoules, which is kind of a reflective of the well-to-wake of the fuels relative to their CO2 reduction. New boundary conditions relative to safety, relative to the fuel strategies, relative to different types of fuels, availability, scalability, profitability. And obviously, you know, how are we dealing with infrastructure, new relationships? We're going to talk a little bit about not only, you know, what we hear about government to government, public-private, but we're going to be talking about owners to charterers, how that relationship has changed, will change going forward, as well as kind of, quite frankly, the ship-to-port interface. So I'm going to go ahead and start. And Carlos, I'm going to give you the first question.
Sorry, Christopher, my name is Costas, not
Costas.
Carlos, but okay.
I said Costas.
Okay.
It's okay. It's Carlos is your middle name, right? But anyway, Costas, tell us a little bit, you know, where are you today? what's your playbook going forward? Do you, in fact, have kind of a short game, mid game, and long game dealing with some of these uncertainties?
Okay, good afternoon, Christopher. Today it's a very big day for Greeks. We have a big holiday in Greece. We are celebrating the Independence Day, and we say in Greece, Χρόνια πολλά. However, as we are here to support Capital Link, I'm here, and with my family, I just bring my family here in order to see Singapore and to enjoy the Maritime Week. DryDel, it's a private-owned company. Our headquarters, we are based in Greece, in Athens, and we have one of the youngest fleet in the Greek market. Actually, it's a private-owned company. We have been awarded of the best dry company in 2024 by Lloyd's, and we are having very young fleet. Our current fleet is 12 ships, all bulk carriers from handy up to Kamsarmax size. For the next 3 years, we're expecting to have 11 more new buildings, all coming from the best quality shipyards in Japan. Out of the 11 new buildings, we decided, which mainly we do Ultramax and Handymax, we decided 6 months to invest on the Cape market. We went 6 months ago and we signed 2 Cape size to be delivered in 2028 by Namura shipyards. The reason that we went to a bigger size is that we see a lot of potential coming out of the Capes, so that's why we decided to invest in this market. Despite that, we are not only ship owners, but we have very strong, very reputable operating office all around the world. We have 4 offices in Singapore, Dubai, Sao Paulo, and now we just opened in Houston. But our Singapore office has been here since 2010. We are very active operators in the market. Mainly, we are contracting more than 5.5 million tons of cargo on the third-party business along COA, only for dry ships, mainly Ultramax and Kamsarmax size and Handymax. And we are controlling on the long TC period 22 ships from Japanese owners. Our long-time charter period is between 2 up to 5 years' time. Now, as you say, we are keep growing all the volume of the business, and we are looking more to develop more customers. For me, the cargo is a king for the dry market. Now, for the short period, my plans, I would like to explore more financing methods, and not only play vanilla loans, but and bareboats with leaseback. But now I would like to focus more on JOLCO finance and JV project with Far East clients. My medium plan is to increase my operating office, my operating activity, by opening new offices around the world in the most shipping capital countries. And my long term is I would like to have diversification on my current fleet. So when we see the right opportunity, definitely would like to invest on the tankers, on the containers, when we see the asset price will be a bit low and we find the right opportunity. That's all from me.
Okay. James, how about you? What's in that playbook for you?
Yeah, I think I'll answer that a little bit from an environmental and sustainability point of view, which I think was the theme of this afternoon. At the moment where we are, we're a fleet of 90 ships or so, around about 15 million deadweight tons. And that's up from when I started the business 17 years ago now, with 12 ships. And I think what we're proud of at the company is that fleet is approximately 45% more efficient today than it would have been if we had kept the same fleet in 2008. So it's been a kind of a ride to try and make the fleet more efficient, and we've done that by building bigger, better ships, but really being absolutely focused on improving the quality of the ship since we started back in 2008. And we all know a lot of the retrofits that are possible you can make to your fleet. And those are all things like that we've talked about in terms of ducts or a better efficiency of the engine, paint. But we've also now really started embracing new technology over the last few years. So we heard about some of those technologies just in the last panel, but we talk about things like wind. One of our very good customers here, Vale, that we've done a fantastic wind project with large, huge wind wings. But it's not only things like wind. We've added a shaft generator to that ship, which means that you can cut one generator while you're sailing. We have much better route optimization now, very sophisticated route optimization. Again, better paint, better cleaning systems. All of these things are adding to further efficiency. But really, when we look forward now, it's really where we're going to go to next. So we talked, and the panel talked just now about sort of interim fuels. We obviously see the need for biofuels as an interim fuel, but I think we're trying to look sort of further forward to say, what is the longer term solution? And we think ammonia is probably, the end solution. So we're pleased to say that we've ordered some ammonia ships now. We still have a big understanding about where the fuel's going to come from, who's going to pay for it, and so I'm always a little bit nervous when all my major customers are on the panel before me, because I suppose I'm going to be asking them, and it wasn't that clear, the answer, but we're obviously hoping that our customers and their customers will end up helping us pay towards certainly the technical cost, but more importantly, the fuel cost going forward. And then the fourth kind of area that we've really concentrated when we look to the future, but also a current play, is around carbon capture. We've just fitted our first ship with a new carbon capture system. It just sailed past Singapore at the moment. Unfortunately, we can't offload CO2 in Singapore yet, so there's still some work to do that, but we're on the way to Europe where we'll offload some CO2. So I think, I talk about kind of two levers that I have. One is to make my ships more efficient, and one is to capture the remaining carbon in some form. And either, I can either do that as of today. I can either have a zero carbon fuel, which is not ready, or I have to somehow make the ships more efficient, or I have to capture the carbon. So we're talking about trying to capture carbon onshore, on the ship. As an example, we've just fitted this one carbon capture system. But we also talk about capturing carbon onshore and trying to offset our fuel emissions. And I think that's a big part of our future as well, looking at various different carbon projects, carbon capture projects onshore, direct air carbon capture, indirect air carbon capture onshore, and that will be a very big part of our future as well.
Great, James. I mean, it's interesting because it sounds like, at the deck plate level, this group right here is kind of dealing with essentially an equation. 70% is obviously in the fuel, and we'll talk a little bit about, and as we continue, kind of where you think that's going. But that other 30%, whether it's 15% in energy retrofits, 15%, we haven't talked about data performance optimization. It seems that as you build your decarbonization strategies, that's kind of where you're beginning to kind of zero in on, because that's actually the stuff that you can control and actually can give you direct improvements in fuel consumption. Christoph, what about you?
Yeah, we are at Borealis Maritime. We are slightly different than some of the owners sitting with me here on the panel. We look at shipping through the eyes of an investor to a large extent. We're operating a shipping company, as many of my colleagues here. To some extent, we are doing ship management as well, but we are really driven much more by our view of various sectors. So we also move from sector to sector. We had a very big container fleet. We built a fleet of about 50 container ships up over the last 10 years and sold most of them again. We are now quite big into offshore. We have had a sizable fleet in chemicals. So we really move between sectors. We invest in joint ventures together with large institutions from the US, Europe, and also here in Asia. So we are our playbook is therefore slightly different. We don't have a strategy around fleet size or things like that. We're really opportunistic around sectors that we go into, or the way we invest capital. At these kind of conference, you get asked quite often, "Hey, Christoph, how's the market treating you right now?" and I have two answers for that. And one is great for the existing fleet. Everything has done quite well, but challenging for my new capital providers. So it's a challenging environment right now to invest into. And this is regardless of which sector. As I said, we have the ability to move between sectors and focus on the sector that makes what we believe makes the most sense from an investor perspective. But this market right now is really challenging. We find it. There's so much money in shipping around that returns that some ship owners demand are, in our view, too low to the risks they're taking. But obviously, if you're sitting on huge amounts of cash, some people may make decisions that they're happy with 8 or 9% return, because otherwise the money would be sitting in the bank, and that is obviously for us not acceptable, because for us it's the investor money that we're investing. So our outlook for the market, and our short or medium or long-term outlook, is really, I can summarize it sometimes also in the way, I know that I know nothing. Meaning, we have experienced over the last 5 years, every single year, surprises. 2020, COVID, Ukraine war. Then we were happy that we had sold our container ship fleet at really good values, and the market was coming down, and then suddenly the Houthis started shooting, and we regretted every container ship we had just sold. So you have to be nimble, you have to be adapting. The geopolitical environment is changing all the time. And so for us, this is one of the things that we always want to be as nimble as we can between sectors with our investments. Don't name your ship after your kids. Don't get to touch them. Buy and sell as it makes most money. So for us, really, to determine a long-term strategy is really to try to make money for our investors. And if we make money for our investors, they're happy and they will stick with us.
That's fantastic. I mean, it's quite interesting. I mean, it's obviously a strong balance sheet goes a long way. Low operating costs really are key to this going forward. James, what about you? Jonathan.
Sure, no problem. Good afternoon. Find that when I'm in most...
I am actually dyslexic, so I do have a genetic deficiency, so that is true. Go ahead.
I find that when we're in most rooms like this, most people don't know what really LPG is, the LPG market, certainly not what Petrodec does. So, the playbook and where we are right now, I think I'll just use a minute just to explain Petrodec's model. We are the second largest VLGC owner in the world, with by far the youngest fleet on the water. Year in, year out, one of the largest physical and derivatives traders in LPG, and then heavily invested in downstream development, onshore import facilities, and largely the Indian Ocean basin, and where economies are developing and they don't have the existing infrastructure. So that's where we are right now. So with that, LPG being one of the cleanest burning fuels in the barrel, to kind of oversimplify that, we, on the most fuel efficient, youngest fleet, transport one of the cleanest energy sources in the world currently to parts of the world for the cleanest reasons, i.e. improving clean cooking and giving it access to 1/3 of the world's population. Medium term, as I mentioned, youngest fleet. Fortunately, I work for a shareholder base that, without compromise, one of the main goals is always having one of the youngest fleets on the water. So, we did our fleet renovation with dual fuel technology, LPG, back in 2020. 1/3 of our fleet is that, average age profile of less than 5 years. So from medium-term plan, we kind of feel like we're in a benefit position right now where we can sit and wait and see what the broader shipping market shows us next. There's not really a big first mover advantage for us because of the product that we transport, the fuel that we burn for propulsion. So we're very much in a wait and see. LPG's been an extremely profitable market the last several years, very much in a stockpiling cash position. And then longer term, it's large-scale investment into that value chain. Now, whether that's shipping, whether that's import terminals, whether that's expanding the trading group, probably the one thing that we've done better, one of the things that we do best is just figuring out where in that value chain to allocate resources and risk and capital. And so that's where we are right now.
Jonathan, I'm curious. I know it. What's your view on the emerging ammonia market going forward? Do you have any feels on, is ammonia a transport vector for hydrogen? As you look at shipping, you have this other shipping for shipping story, where you're looking at shipping as carriers of different types of fuels. You're probably closer to that space than most. I just would be curious what your comments are on that.
Yeah, I think it's definitely at some point an answer for the space. I think that the supply element, if you look at the fleet expansion in LPG and LNG, originally just after announcement and what people finally realized what was going to happen with shale gas exploration in the United States, the fleet expansion came largely on the back of that. There was a supply curve shifting event that was very easy to forecast to know that the demand for the ships were going to be there. We don't see that happening in ammonia yet. So whilst we think it's going to happen, I think there's maybe a little bit of a false start in those that have gone out and built VLACs. It's not to say that it won't come, but I think initially, for sure, a lot of those ships are going to be transporting LPG earlier on in their career. And then as a marine fuel, it's very difficult for us transporting LPG already to say that we're going to move into another propulsion in the next decade. Realize very clearly that LPG is not a long-term answer. I think that one place where we maybe have a little bit of a differing view is that, without question, 2050 is an important milestone. I think sometimes it maybe just gets overlooked the next 25 years, the things that can be done between now and then to kind of ease that transition. A lot of good can be done, a lot of bad can be avoided. So.
And that's great. So Anil, little different type of business. Tell us kind of what's kind of in the back of your mind relative to your playbook going forward.
Okay, my playbook is very, very different than the panelists here, but boy, what a difference here. So most of you are in this room, or at least 3 out of the 4 panelists have done business with me in the ship recycling business. So my business comes from a ship recycling background. And now, of course, I'm sitting on this panel as also the founder of Lila Global, which owns 38 ships. 30 of them are dry bulk, 4 are stainless steel tankers, and 4 are feeders, MPPs. So it's a diverse fleet. We started, let me tell a little story. So in 2015, when we decided to invest in ship owning, I did a JV together with a ship owner from Greece, and we became majority shareholder, 60% investment in new buildings of Ultramaxes in China. And I went to meet a client, because he's a big ship owner, world's largest ship owner, ship operator, charterer, to discuss, ships for recycling. And when I went to meet him, he started asking me questions about my new buildings. And I realized he knew more about my ships than I did. I had no idea what he was talking about. And then I realized, here's the difference between a legacy ship owner and a ship recycler trying to be a ship owner. So I decided to make a total U-turn and spend our resources where I think our expertise is, which is in the area of mid-aged and vintage vessels. And we were quite lucky with these markets. Christoph said about containers. We had containers, we sold them. Fortunately, some of them at a good time. Then we went into tankers, again, both from VLCCs to MRs. We had about 14 of those. We timed the market right, and again, we got out of that market, and then we went into dry bulk. And so we even had a cruise ship, which is still running in India. So I think we have a very diverse fleet, which is focused on getting the right timing. But when I started looking at this ship, at this area, Christopher, and because I heard a lot of these discussions about fuels, and the views that started emerging is the life cycle assessment of a vessel. I think most of our research today is on these new fuel technologies and so forth. And you come from ABS, so you know this better than I do, but my view is, at least I asked ChatGPT this question, and it's telling me that 60% of the ship's greenhouse gas emissions comes during the shipbuilding stage, out of which, 40%, out of which 90% comes from steel, production of steel. And coming from a ship recycling background, which I understand steel, because we price the value of a ship based on the residual value of a ship based on steel, I started thinking that while these fuels, especially the non-fossil fuels, this is at least 10 years down the road. So when I built these 2015, these ships, that time they were LNG ready. They hit the water in 17, I still own them. We haven't put LNG ever into these ships. So my point is, for the next 5 years, we're still going to have a lot of debates on the fuels, whether it's ammonia and whatever else. And at the same time, there's going to be another 5 years minimum to scale this fuel technologies. So you're talking about at least 10 years. So our playbook is, at least for the next 10 years, we need to focus on medium and vintage ships. And today we have 38. And what I realized is when you run a vintage fleet, you need a very strong technical, operational, and commercial expertise. So in the dry bulk, we have both technical and commercial in-house, but in the other sectors, we don't. And so the playbook moving forward is to first build these strong teams and then scale up across all sectors, once again in containers and tankers and so forth. So that's what we see in the next 10 years, and hopefully we definitely see about doubling our fleet, because I've bought and sold 5,000 ships over the last 30 years of my life. So I think we can do more of that, and that should lead our global component.
Super, thank you. Let me switch a little bit of the topic and move a little bit from markets and technology to people. Costas, how are you handling the training, the people side of this business? You have so much convergence going on. You've got potentially new fuels. You've got digitization, automation. Just the whole workforce development training equation is changing from age, experience, and training to skills and continuous learning. How are you handling that in your space?
Okay, Christopher, this is a very good question. Actually, my company is investing only on conventional fuels. Our ships are all new buildings which are coming from the Japanese shipyards, and the consumptions of the ships are amazing. On one of the handy we just received last year from Namura shipyard, we have 12 tons, 12 knots at 12 knots. We are mixing sometimes with my operation people what is the speed with the consumption. This is amazing performance of a ship. So as everybody understands, with the new ships on a conventional, we are having 8 tons less. Now, with our people, what we are doing, we are spending a lot of money to go and train them on the Japanese shipyards, on the new types of engines. All our engines are phase 3 and with the new technology, EXI3. On the commercial side, we do a lot of seminars. We go together with BIMCO. We learn everything what's coming new. So we're spending a lot of time and a lot of money inside my company in order to train these people and to always be updated, in order to be competitive in the market. But we're very pleased with our new buildings, which they are very fuel-efficient vessels based on conventional build.
Great. James, we were on a panel this morning, or we were talking about, or yesterday rather, we were talking about people. Can you share with us a little bit about kind of what's your people plan in your space, in your company?
Yeah, we've always taken the view that it's important to own and manage our own ships. So since we started, I really think the ship management is really the soul of all shipping. So we've taken a very sort of long-term view, maybe sort of old-style legacy ship owner type view that we own the ship for a long time. We may or may not name it after our kids. We name all our ships after mountains, actually. But the intention is to keep the ship for a life of asset. And along with that is to have our crew for a long, long time. I really get to know them and train them incredibly well. One of the things which is interesting these days with technology is the ability to now, expand the training from both onshore and that, happened a lot through COVID, through necessity, but we did a lot of on-ship training. And now with new, especially with the internet speeds that we do a lot of special simulation training on board. We can now take data, for example, from all our ports we go to, especially difficult ports, and simulate the entry to these difficult ports. So I think there's a lot of room now for increased training. We're running at the moment, for example, an officers conference where we meet physically. It's still very important to meet physically and speak and train and update everyone on the new ships and new technology. But we can then take that training and apply it to people on board. So we have a lot more touch points, I think, than we used to have with training. But the other area that I think is really changed over the years is really, obviously a massive attention to safety. That's absolutely core to everything we do, but also about well-being, and well-being not only being sort of physical, but mental health. So again, I think technology helps us with that, again, through touch points, but we're running now a lot of programs, one through Well at Sea, we call it, where we encourage people to do a lot of physical exercise, for example. I think last year we had over 100,000 kind of points where people have done an exercise program. They record it on various apps, and then we actually, it works towards a goal of contributing to their local community, and then we match the money that they've raised. So I think it's a sort of holistic approach. Again, with mental health, we have a whole range of care buddies who are now based and trained on all the different ships. They run mental health programs on board. We can interact that with connection from the shore, with trained professionals from shore, and try to make, a much more sort of holistic approach to training and mental health and mental well-being.
No, that's great. I mean, listen, I think we've all talked about, we've all acknowledged that people ultimately at the end of the day are going to be the real heroes as we move forward. Jonathan, and actually I'm going to ask Christoph the same question after Jonathan. With all this uncertainty, with all these, the development of these regulations, whether it's CII, whether it's Fuel EU, whether now it's upcoming with IMO, the regulations really kind of tie the charter and the owner in some ways together. And the charter now actually has some skin in the game as well. Has your relationship with the charters, started to change a little bit, as you move forward, or are you basically seeing kind of the same type of relationship over the last couple of years?
It's changed quite a lot the last couple of years in the sense that, also LPG trade and VLGC shipping is very much in its infancy compared to a lot of the other shipping sectors that are represented in this room. And what we're going through, what we've gone through the last couple of years, is this evolution where traders are becoming ship owners, and in the same way that a bit of a commoditization of the underlying product at the end of the day. And so when you have trading companies move into the ship owning space, you've got this immediate kind of adoption of ways to, kind of maximize your relationship with the ship owner, much to the ship owner's chagrin sometimes. And so we just, all of the big traders are now ship owners in their own right in our space. And so, on all of the topics that you've referenced, they flatten the learning curve out very, very quickly on, their ability to be very adept at forcing the ship owner's hand, at least in our space, to have language in the charter parties that are protective of them.
Wow.
Much more quickly, I think, than we would have anticipated.
What about in your space?
Yeah, for us, most of our long-term chartering has been in the container market. In our chemical tanker fleet, we trade spots, so we don't really have long-term relationship with charterers there. But on the container side, we obviously have had many good and long relationships with charterers. I wouldn't say that they have materially changed over the years. The charterers, particularly the big container lines, obviously they have big programs around decarbonization and their new buildings. the choice of fuel that they want to have for the new buildings, but it doesn't really affect our second-hand vessels. And we actually haven't really built new buildings against charter. We've always bought second-hand. The one that I would say is in general what we found sometimes disappointing with some of the charterers is that when EU ETS came in with clauses, now with fuel, EU Maritime, we found it still sometimes some of the discussion challenging, meaning that it was quite clear that we are providing them an asset that they are chartering and they have full control what they do with it, etc., and the polluter pays. But still agreeing the clauses in charter parties was in many cases still very, very difficult. And the requirement of charterers to say, look, yes, I know I have to pay for it, but you fund it first and I pay you later. So basically expecting that the owner takes counterparty risk on charterers. Now, if it's Maersk, it's fine, but there's other charterers which are not of the same standing. And so also with fuel maritime, it's some of these clauses and getting them agreed and getting the charterer to acknowledge, of course it's our responsibility, has been sometimes more challenging than what we expected. The other thing also where we were a bit disappointed that some charterers, when we came to dry dockings, we suggested retrofits and investments into the vessel, and they said, yes, please go ahead. We're like, yeah, what we need to discuss about the economics, and they're like, no, that's your choice. And we said, why would we do it if we don't see an economic benefit from it? And we also we have found that actually charterers in many ways have not been willing to really pass through the savings that they're going to achieve from these retrofits and make us to really incentivize to put these on board. So we just had we just last week, we finished off a Panamax dry docking. We put a new bulbous bow on it. We invested almost $1 million of retrofits, but the charterer was not willing to change the rate. Now the charter ends at the end of the year, so we made this investment into the future of the vessel, believing that in the future we will recapture it. But it was really disappointing that the charter was not willing to make any contribution to the retrofit. So, I find that generally the relation with the charters haven't changed, but some of these things I would have thought could have been agreed in a slightly easier way and slightly more acknowledging that the owner, if he invests into ships to make them better, more fuel efficient, and the charterer has 100% of the benefit, that of course the charterer has to really pass through this benefit.
I appreciate it. So I've got time. I'm going to go through the entire group here. I've got kind of one final question. I just want to kind of set this up. I get back to this theme of uncertainty. And I think if you look at the, you kind of look at the space of owners, there's probably 3 swim lanes of owners in general. I would say you have the fast movers, you probably have the fast followers, and you have a group there that's probably doing nothing but waiting. And I think what we're seeing is that, yes, there's a growing recognition that there's going to be an inevitable shift moving forward. Obviously, there's concerns about cost and availability. But I think that, sometimes, at least what I'm seeing is the overall sentiment is kind of cautious, but a little concerned going forward. So the question that I would like to ask all of you going down the line, and I am going to get every one of your names right this time, I promise you. James, any kind of closing thoughts on this theme relative to, to kind of where you are, where you're going? How to handle this uncertainty, because there's a lot of it coming at us from all sorts of different angles, and just how to, how are you planning on navigating that, and any comments to the audience?
Yeah, look, I think I certainly put myself in a leader position. The first category that you said there, I think. We are, and I mentioned this yesterday as well, and we all know we're in a really tight situation on the climate. We're obviously not reaching our goals of 1.5 and beyond, so we're running out of time. So I think we certainly see ourselves as trying to demonstrate that we can use this new technology retrofit existing vessels, improve the legacy fleet, but also take a leadership position in new fuels. There's obviously a lot of risk in that. I already pointed that out. We all know the risk. But I think as we work closer with charterers, as the reality of the impacts of climate change hits harder, I think we will get to a position that we can move forward pretty positively. I'd like to also just say, it's obviously important to keep the basics completely correct. So when we navigate, risks, we still need to make sure we have, a decent cover for our business and that we maintain safety and efficiency at the topmost of our priorities.
Great. Christoph?
Well, uncertainty brings opportunity. That's the way, I see it. We had earlier also someone mentioning disruption is good for shipping. Uncertainty is good for someone who wants to go in and out of markets. And so we look at it, therefore, to some extent positively. I said at the beginning of my comments that you got to be nimble, you got to be challenge yourself. We sit together with our team every 6-8 weeks or so and discuss every single market and try to challenge ourselves. What is changing. We are. This is the owner panels now, but I was quite surprised. We went through 50 minutes of charterer panel and now probably soon half an hour of owner panel without ever mentioning demand and supply. Still plays a role in our business. So yes, all these kind of topics that we're discussing here, geopolitical, alternative fuels, et cetera, all plays into obviously decision making, but also demand and supply will eventually have to play a role in our decisions as well that we do.
Great. Costas, how about you? And by the way, you have a beautiful family. I'm assuming that you are with them. Yeah.
That's correct.
So
Okay.
you've got your
the
kids
beginning.
here as well. So to the family and to the audience.
Okay.
Final words.
Okay, thank you very much. Uncertainty is quite challenging today in the shipping market. As everybody knows here, that every day we go in the office and we don't know what to expect. Every hour we are watching the news, Bloomberg News, Twitter, the X, in order to see our next planning. There is a lot of trade wars, a lot of new tariffs are coming, so we are a bit, it's not easy to perform and it's quite difficult in our times. However, now what we are doing with DryDel is that we try to avoid the disputed areas to trade and to fix more cargoes. So we try to avoid Black Sea and Red Sea areas, and we do mainly trades from East Coast South America, South Africa, and Australia cargoes, which the things there are more easy. In addition to, for the new regulations which are coming, as you know, our ships are being penalized much less, as we are burning very fuel efficient vessels. They're burning 11 to 12 tons. So when we go to European Union, to European ports, we are very competitive in the market, which this helps a lot the new builds, the new buildings, and the new vessels. In addition to what we say that for the technology, our ships, they have the live monitoring and the live streaming on board the vessel. And from my office, from my people, the technical people who do in-house management, we can see exactly how the vessel is performing. We see on live the main engine performance, and we know exactly how much is each cylinder it burns. On the live streaming, this gives a lot of advantage in order to reduce the fuel consumption on the vessels and to have optimum speed. This is huge improvement, and we are very competitive in the market, trading with the new building ships.
Thank you, Costas. Anil?
Yeah, so I think, Chris, if I may, you asked the question of training because we run a vintage fleet. Training becomes very important of crew, and part of the training about the mechanical is also the safety training. Fortunately, in 30 years I've been in business, we don't have any fatalities on our board, so we are quite proud of that. Then the question comes on charterers. We know what you guys are more experienced, the panelists here, but what I find about charterers, in a bad market, they tend to be very picky. In a good market, they tend to be more flexible. Because the nature of our ships are such, you have to be very, as you said, I think Christoph said, nimble. I use the term velocity. We have to move very, very fast because the window of opportunity and risks is very quickly, it opens and closes. So because we are a privately held company and decisions are made very fast, we can do that. The geopolitical risks are here to stay, and what we used to call black swan events are no longer black swan events. It seems like they keep on hitting us more regularly. As Costas said, you watch Bloomberg and X, and first thing you do in the morning is I read 5 newspapers globally to see what happened, and especially I want to make sure what did Trump say. So I mean, we got so that moves things around. So given the fact that we have a mid-age fleet and a vintage fleet, we have the flexibility. Our charterers are not willing to pay for anything. So we do a lot of spot trading. And so most of the risk falls upon us. For us, going around, because we do the Ukraine voyages, our capes do go to Ukraine to China. That's always a very high-risk area. We do very careful planning, going through that with the underwriters and so forth. How are we going to do that? And we had an unfortunate incident where one of our capes, of all the people, got attacked by pirates. But we moved so fast, 24 hours, all of us, including myself, sat in the office, and we got our ship back within 24 hours. So I think that's the kind of velocity we bring into the business, and that's what is needed in these constant game of opportunities and threats. So I think everybody else here has to be kind of look at this. I don't think we can say the good old days anymore. These are the good old days.
Great, thank you, Anil. Jonathan, you've got the last word.
Sure. Two answers. On the environmental and the climate, and I think it's very, hopefully no one disputes this, but I mean, everyone in this room, in this industry, it's obvious that everyone needs to clean up their act. So I don't view that as being as uncertain. Renovate your fleet, adopt new technologies, operate the fleets that you have more efficiently to the extent that you're able to do that. I know it sounds very easy, but with that kind of thesis and mission statement at the heart of your fleet and the way that you manage and build, buy, operate ships, I don't think you can ever be wrong if you kind of follow that very simple mission statement. The uncertainties with respect to Bloomberg, there's Twitter risk everywhere, every day. I think that, to Christoph's point, he's absolutely right. No one talked about supply-demand fundamentals, which look, in some cases, very toppy. Be data-driven. This is a cyclical business. Making good decisions that you would make at any time, irrespective of the Twitter risk and the news that is constantly changing. Over time, that will smooth out and will continue to always be the right answer. So.
Great, thank you. Listen, we have, it was a real treat. We have had a chance to really listen and hear and quite frankly, meet the battlefield generals that are out there every day working in this environment. And I think what I picked up basically looks like there are 4 guiding principles. I've heard these across the last 45 minutes: flexibility, agility, a little bit of strategic patience along the way, and I think probably the most important one, I think they have all learned to really simply, they've made uncertainty their friend, they've learned how to embrace change, and I think those are some of the things that we can all kind of carry with us as an industry. I want to thank the panelists. It's been a real treat, and if you could join me and give them a big round of applause. Thank you.